my brother, Professor Allen. Professor Allen, what was Frederick Douglass's view on Pan-Africanism and going back to Africa? Because I know you're pretty thorough about that. Go ahead, brother.
Oh yes, sir. How y'all doing, room? What's going on, family? There's so much to say on this. First and foremost, I was professor of education at a historically black college in Memphis, Tennessee,
Hmm.
and I was sitting down at the lunch table with a history professor, full professor, who didn't have a PhD, and that caught my attention right away. But anyway, I asked him what's his curriculum at the school, and his curriculum was from he said Milana Karenga, who was a Pan Africanist, and it got my attention. Why? Because Pan Africanism has always been associated with oppish behavior.
Yeah.
Somebody earlier mentioned W. Du Bois, and what I wanted to comment on, or Brother Sulan did. I want to comment on W. Du Bois. The history, like Professor James Small says, history will erase the mystery. And if
Hmm.
you look back at Du Bois, he wanted to go to Harvard real bad and got rejected. And the second time around, he got accepted. He was the first black man to get a PhD from Harvard University. And at Harvard, he was imbued with that ideology of Pan Africanism. It's my opinion that that ideology was given to W. Du Bois to to destroy the black community. Why? Why the why is important because before W. Du Bois, you had Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington's ideology was unity. It was called industrial education, which stated that basically every child, you can be whatever the hell you want to be, but every child needs a trade first. So
Right.
what Booker T. Washington's ideology did was give the black community a financial base. And then here comes W. Du Bois from Harvard with Pan Africanism and that talented 10th bullshit that
Hmm.
said that we need a leader. And we're still suffering. In conclusion, we're suffering under that talented 10th bullshit right now. Al Sharpton is talented 10th. On that, I land my plane.
There you go. Yes, indeed. That Boule class, that's been a big nothing burger for us. And they've used that Boule class against us. You know, they've used that Boule class against us. The Rollins and people like that. That's been a problem. And that's why I always say, don't the dominant society, they're real big on creating leaders for us. That's why they always try to lie and try to make me the leader of some damn body. Because when you have a leader, you can attack that so-called leader as a proxy for attacking the community. You understand? That's why I get away from that black leader stuff. We don't need leaders. We just need a code. The code is the leader. Just stick by the code. Just have a code of conduct that's logical. When you move certain ways, is that going to be a constructive move? Everything is all about logic.
And when you any history of the migration of blacks from the South, it began in earnest after this speech. Because blacks suspected that something was going wrong. Now, white editorial writers made Booker T. Washington the leader of black America. They made him the leader of black America, declared that he was, and white philanthropy began to filter all the, not just for Tuskegee, the money that any black got for education had to come through Booker Washington. He was literally the dictator of black America. Now, I'm not so much against dictators if something good is being dictated, and sometime he dictated something good.
Welcome back to Breakdown Friday. Joseph Ward, Professor Carl Tone Jones, Patrick Irvin. We are here breaking down the conversation around black leaders being given to black America and being given to black America for the purposes of making sure that the white establishment is able to continue what they're doing, white supremacy is able to continue, and black people will be null and void or not a threat to white supremacy. Tariq and the gentleman in that conversation were talking about W.E.B. Du Bois's position versus Booker T. Washington's position. W.E.B. Du Bois' usage of Pan-Africanism and the talented 10th ideology in the class. And then it moved into Dr. John Henry Clark. It was one of the lectures that I played a couple months ago, maybe a month ago, about Dr. John Henry Clark giving his analysis on our leaders being given to us. And in this particular audio, he was talking about Booker T. Washington, but he also talked about W.E.B. Du Bois as well. So, and you heard Dr. Clark's stance on Booker T. Washington being given to Black America by white America and actually becoming a gatekeeper for Black America through white America being that proxy. And he said it was some good and some bad. But overall, we're talking about our leaders and our leaders being given. But also, we have to talk about the followers who continue to follow the leaders, even after they are exposed, and especially nowadays, because Black America, of course, more study in PC, I'm sure he has more information on this, but from what I've been reading in, you're very knowledgeable on this stuff, man. You got it. You the dude in that, man. But we started reading Destruction of Black Civilization, and what we learned is a lot of stuff that's happening to us as far as from our oppressors is not new. Mm-hmm. What we have continued to do is fail to understand history. So, of course, that's where the breakdowns come in, so we can get further into this. So, hey, man, PC, while we on you, man, let's go ahead and get this thing right. Do it how we do it. So, what's your assessment on what the gentleman was talking about in the conversation with Tariq Nasheed and blending into what Dr. Clark is talking about? Our leaders being given to us, the quality of our leadership, but also the followers who continue to follow these leaders, even after they learn that these leaders don't have our best interest.
Well, I think that there's something to that in terms of our leaders being chosen, because you can't point to any other community and say, well, this is their leader.
Right.
You can't go to the Jewish community and say that this is their leader. You can't go to the Latino community. You can't go to the Arab community. You can't go to the white community. I mean, the leader of the white community happens to be sitting in the White House. So you really, the fact that this is a pointed way of creating, this is called playing from both sides, right? So your enemy chooses the person that they're going to appoint. They're going to provide resources to. They're going to put them in a position of authority, of assumed authority over a community that is dying for somebody to come save them. I mean, Black people have been indoctrinated to look for a savior, the savior's complex, expecting Christ to come through the cloud, through the cloud in the sky one day, and the fact that I totally agree with the fact that the concept of not allowing somebody on the outside to choose your leaders. And go further, we've always had this conversation, and this is one of the things we kind of go back and forth on. I don't believe in charismatic leadership, because if you have an appointed leader, all you have to do is cut the head off the snake, and the body will die. And we've seen that time and time again in the Black community, that if the leader professes or provides himself or is seen as a threat, even Booker T. Washington, was taken out, so they will snuff the head. They will cut the head off. Literally, two sanitation workers were sacrificed, pushed into the back of garbage trucks, and allowed to be murdered with the trash compactor within the trucks to lure Dr. King to Memphis, because Dr. King, according to them, went off script and was seen. And I think the interesting part about this is they allow for the leadership to be absorbed
by the followership.
Yeah.
And once that person reaches a certain status, just like that, they take them out of there. And I think that's done purposefully to remove all hope. So yeah, I'm so I agree with the notion that, don't don't let anybody pick and choose your leaders.
Yeah. I mean, especially not your oppressors. Your oppressors shouldn't be picking your leaders. Your oppressors should not have any hand or any say, any thought, any idea in who your leaders are. The grassroots leader versus the bourgeois leader, or the popular leader, the leader who is connected, the leader who has any connection to any sort of system, organization, or any entity within white supremacy. Those people should not be the leaders of the masses, because those people are compromised through their relationships and their proxy to white supremacy. Of course, those people want to be there. That's why they're there. That's why they have those positions. That's why they took those positions, because they're there. And so you have to ask yourself the question, if you don't trust white people, you're against white supremacy, you're against racism, you're against the government, all these things, why do you keep following the leaders that they give us through those systems that represent those systems?
Well, those are things that when you think about the creation of the, right, not the Negro, but the
right.
When you think about those, the way that we were, our ancestors were programmed through the brutality of chattel slavery and the slave making plantations, like in Barbados, like in Louisiana, like in some of the other ports along the Caribbean. The obedience factor was beaten into us. And so, and it's funny, right? Because even in the conscious sectors, the Pan-African and Black nationalist sectors, you see this. You see that there's a rejection of the Most High, of God. And in lieu of that, we'll speak to our ancestors and things of that nature. But the God on earth that we still seem to be obedient to, that we submit to, is the white God that brought us to this country.
Yep.
And enslaved our ancestors who was already here. So that's when you're trained to operate like that, you're always going to take a backseat to white authority. And then not presumptively, but I've seen it in person, white people walk into a room of Black folk and assume that they already have the authority to interject,
right,
to take the question, the leadership.
We talk about this often.
Yeah, to assume the head of the table, or that they have access to the head of the table. And then what we normally see is the Black folk in that group wanting to all of a sudden, they acquiesce and they want to be fair. Well, let's hear them out.
Right.
You never have that opportunity there too.
But I go back to that Negro mindset. That's the importance of the Negro mindset, and then implanting that, because that people with the Negro mindset will always acquiesce to the white person who's around, or the white person that seems to be in charge, because it's like the adage, and I'm not gonna say this is for every hood, but I know hoods in this city. White people who look like they have authority are safer in the most violent hoods than the Black people who are in those hoods, because they look like they have authority, because they associate that whiteness and that authority to punishment and consequences and all those things.
I got one better, Joe. Man, who we letting off the hook? In all Black neighborhoods, all hoods, the hooders of the hoods. If you got a drug corner and somebody like me and you come up and say, hey man, we're about to do some business over here, there's going to be a conversation. It's not going to be so friendly. It's going to be adversarial. The next day, a white man can come in and say, hey, we're confiscating this land, this area. Y'all need to move. And they'll pack up and go. It won't be no fight back, no pushback or nothing.
Yeah.
So, I've seen the gangsters.
Mindset.
I didn't know how articulate gangsters were until they were talking to police. Sir, you're violating my rights, sir. I have never It's
Yeah,
like-
it's that mindset.
I like you would have done that. You'd have done well in school. But okay.
Anybody, yeah.
I digress.
Anybody with that mindset though will be fair, par for the course to just follow the leader that is given, because the leader is charismatic, or the leader looks like that they have that proximity to whiteness that those black folk want. So Pat, man, you already know what it is, man. Jump on up in here. What do you think about the conversation between Tariq and the gentleman, especially what they're talking about, Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois, those leaders who were perceived to be given to us, especially going into the clip of Dr. Clark talking about Booker T. Washington. But what's your overall thoughts of the conversation and our leaders? Because we talk, you the one really got us talking about the followership and how the faulty followership aids the faulty leadership, just encompassing all of that. Man, jump on in here.
Yeah, I think I agree with Tariq Nasheed's point of the dangers of being given leaders and the dangers of leadership in general. Like everything, there are dangers that come with everything. You know, everything has a list of pros and cons. As far as W.B. Du Bois and Booker T, like we've talked about that. We were talking about that earlier today. My personal view is I don't really have a problem with either ideology. I think the ideologies were speaking to different groups of people. And I think what was missing from those two groups was a third group that would, you know, channel communication between the two. But I think one of the challenges we face is in a society where we've been given leaders. One of the things that's missing that I you know, like you said, Joe, I always harp on is the failure of followership, like to really talk about and really educate people on what it means to actually be a follower, to really talk about the mechanisms of leadership, like why does a leader have this authority? Well, they have that authority because all of their followers have transferred all of their individual authority to this one person. So this one person now operates and moves as an aggregate of the group. But the group has to acquiesce for that. The group has to kind of allow that to happen. So, and therein lies the danger of it, because you can, like Tariq Nasheed is right, you can by proxy attack a group by destroying the leader.
Right.
He's 100% right in that. I think the part he doesn't talk about is the fact that leadership is, in fact, like we said, white people give us our leaders. They do. But leadership is not something that somebody can command. It's always a mantle that's given. It's just now we're wondering, like, who's determining who's giving what? Is it an internal thing or is it an external thing? Because PC is right on a couple different levels, in my opinion. When he says we can't, you know, we don't know who the leaders are in these other communities. That's right on two fronts. So on one front, it's right because we don't have the authority or the power to select their leaders.
Right.
Like, we don't have the authority or the power to select the leaders in the white community. On another front, we're not in the white community, so we don't really know who their leaders are. we don't know. So that means it's very difficult for us to launch any sort of attack on any sort of white group because we don't know what. So therein lies another problem with the black community, is the transparency of the community. And that transparency exists because a lot of the core key mechanisms of the community are dictated to us instead of being decided by us. And so we run in, like when we start talking about leadership, we start running into all of these different things. A big problem that I have is the fact that, and this is one of the core attributes of poor leadership. We talk about this all the time. When you cut the head off a leader, there should be 4 or 5 other leaders spring up from that neck. Proper organizations are hydras. The only reason it might only have one head is because nobody's cut it off yet. But if you cut the head off of a properly run organization, you're making the problem worse.
Right.
So here's the lesson that we have to learn. How to actually be a leader. I think leadership is something that, as a community, like I think in an ideal world, and that's why I say, even with Tariq Nasheed, I fully understand and embrace the fact of him rejecting the mantle of leadership. But there is a level of truth that comes with the fact that that's not a mantle you get to reject. And we've seen that just in the way Tariq Nasheed is looked at. This man for years has
since
said,
the beginning.
I'm not a leader. And black folk have said, yes, you are.
Right.
We don't
So
care.
I was listening to one of his clips yesterday, matter of fact, and he was going back and forth with a lady who was like, you've positioned yourself as the leader of the FBA movement. Matter of fact, I've heard plenty of people tell him that, but yeah, you're correct with that. They don't care. If they like you, you they leader.
Right, but that's the human part of it. And a lot of the times when we talk about the black community, I feel like we're not really looking at us for who we really are and for the human component of being a black person. He benefits from leadership, and that tons of people listen to him, ascribe to his views and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Again, I 100% respect the fact that he's standing up, waving his arm, saying, I'm not nobody's
I don't have
leader.
no problem with it. I don't have no problem with it.
Don't follow me. Like, I'm good with all of it. But I think what the rest of us have to understand is leadership doesn't work like that. When people rock with you, when you say something that they vibe with, when you think on a level that they want to get to, and they see a lot of what they themselves in you, you'll become their leader, and that is not a choice that you get to make. It's not. So all him saying, I'm not your leader, does is give him deniability for anything that any of these people do in his name. He can say that I never said.
I didn't tell him to do that. I told him I wasn't their leader.
That's a powerful thing too. And that's why I think Tariq is very smart.
But that goes back to the followers.
Right, it does. It goes back to, and that's really the core of everything, is that in the black community, we can't deal with this on a leadership level. We can't. We've got to deal with it on a followership level. We've got to start, and the reason I say that is because shame works on followers. Shame does not work on leaders. And you can't shame a leader. I'm sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Well, you can't give a leader to a group of people who don't have a follower mentality. Black people are followers. Too many of us are followers. So that's why leaders can be given, and that's why somebody can declare from the beginning, do not make me your leader. I don't want none of that. And they, yes, you are. Yes, you are. But also, that's why we can be given leaders.
But here's the rub with that, right? The system is, black people are in such a state that even if they didn't give us leaders, we would still pick all the wrong ones.
I know.
That goes back to Dr. Carter G. Woodson's Miseducation of the Negro, in that we're trained to look for the back door, and if the back door is not there, we'll build one.
Yep.
And that's exactly what that looks like when you try, because I'm gonna tell you something. There are people who are righteous that should be leaders, but the community will never follow them, because that person holds the community accountable for things that we need to do personally. And we've been placed in such a nanny state that we want things to be done for us.
Yep.
And that puts a leader, a so-called leader, when you put that person in that position, it puts them in an awkward space, because one of the things I know is that black people really aren't looking for leaders. Black people are looking for scapegoats. So that's why they want to press upon, hey, Tariq, you started the FBA movement, and it's not a movement. If anybody ever listened to them, it's a classification.
Lineage. Yes, lineage.
Lineage. You're either born one or you're not. It's not like there's a meeting in a clearinghouse where people are selecting who becomes FBA or not. It's either you're FBA or not. And it's that simple. So, and I think it's really, like I said, I'll go back to the scapegoat thing. The scapegoat thing is because people are comfortable with you putting your neck on the line for them, as long as it's 100% benefit for them and 0% of the risk.
Right.
I think that's what we're dealing with in this current state. Now, to go back to the W.E.B. Du Boises of the world, everybody who knows anything about W.E.B. Du Bois knows that he was a Rockefeller protege. John D. Rockefeller personally selected him as the first Black graduate of Harvard University, and especially with a doctorate degree. Right? Dr. Carter G. Woodson was the second. So, of this talented 10th concept, if it had actually been followed the way that he designed it, described, it wasn't from him, it was given to him.
Right.
It was just the base model of how society's supposed to work. You go send the most talented people out, the most eligible people out. They get the information, they get the resources and learn and know-how, and then they bring it back home and teach the 90%. That's how it was supposed to. It wasn't supposed to be a separation buffer community, a buffer zone for this 10% of the Black population to run and hide and create a glass ceiling for the rest of the Black community, while getting the trinkets that dribble down from liberal white factions and then placated as, well, the white faction is playing the game. Well, we're giving to the Black community. Yes, you're giving the Black faces, but these Black faces don't represent but 10% of the Black community. And they make sure the other 90% don't have access to what the 10% provides.
Sound like what's going on now with them Dems.
Hey, exactly the greatest heist in the 21st century. 1.5 billion. They don't know where most of the money went. We know where some of it went. That was the distraction. Yeah, we know you gave these superstars all this money, but that doesn't account for 1.4 billion plus another billion that was put together by PACs. That's not included in the war chest.
Hold on, PC. We got to say that different. They gave leaders the money to come and convince us and to remind us who to vote for. The leaders that they gave us.
But I think what PC is saying, I think, is like when you talk about the way the talented 10th was supposed to be, and I agree wholeheartedly. Mm-hmm. And that's why I said that earlier. I think what's missing was that buffer group.
Yes.
That group that between the talented 10th and the other 85, we'll say 80 even, there was supposed to be another 10% of people that facilitated communication and culture and everything else that was necessary from the masses to those people at the top. Those people at the top instead became that 10% that was missing for the white community to the Black community. They were never supposed to be that gateway. They were supposed to be the people filtering down. And because we didn't have that gateway, because what that gateway does, to be clear about my point, what that gateway does is not only does it transmit resources and all of these other things down, but it transmits culture and codes of conduct and other forms of societal engineering up. Oh, y'all think y'all are better than the rest of us. We see that. All right, here's the message. Send that up to him. See what he do now. Oh, he's still moving like that? All right, send this up. Tell him that he's done. And the whole bottom of him opens up and he falls right down to the bottom. All right, now how you feel? Now you're down here with us. All right, don't worry. You're going to be down here for a minute. We're going to send somebody else up there. Don't worry about it. That's how that was, in my mind, that's how that was supposed to work. But
I saw a video. I was at work. I was riding. I was looking at a video of a gentleman who was talking about like the history of the boule, but also the split. And because he hit on, there's a split in the culture between the boule or the elite class and the regular Black people. And we're literally two separate groups of Black people. And we see each other as two separate groups of Black people. And we operate as two separate groups of Black people. The masses are just that, the masses of Black people. The elite, that boule class are the, like you said, the Black white people. And they help to enrich the white class while looking down and making sure they can do whatever they need to do to keep the black people down there, because they have to keep their position. Going back to what Franz Fanon was saying in Wretched of the Earth, the crumb snatchers.
Yeah, well, and there's so many ways this conversation can go.
Yeah.
But I want to stay focused because I just immediately, you know, as you and Pat were talking, I'm thinking in the vision of my mind is, and I hate using entertainers, good Lord. But
they are leaders. They made them our leaders.
Well, no.
Well, of course, they're not our leaders, but you know how they're given to us, and people follow like their leaders.
They're our boule class.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. They are boule. They are boule class. And I think about like how the message that how T.I. and Tiny and their family, and I think about their son.
Yeah.
And I think about how if the message were properly parlayed, their son wouldn't be doing the things he's doing now. In terms of how to act in society and how to, so it goes back to what Pat was saying, I think 2 weeks ago, how the most of us try to get to vibrate during the lowest frequencies of our culture, and we seek that sort of admiration instead of creating a standard that a productive society, a productive community would idolize under. But yeah, I don't want to go off on that tangent, but I think it's very important that we understand that because there's so much chaos right now, that people are looking for order out of the chaos. And that's where when especially if you created the chaos,
yes,
this is the problem reaction solution that always leads to them picking our new leaders. You know,
alien dialectic.
Yeah, it's so
yeah.
So because there is need for leadership, but not charismatic leadership. But it's kind of hard to get there because you do need a voice to sort of center the message in terms of the culture. But I think, like Pat said, there needs to be some people involved who are not corruptible.
Yeah.
Like Elliot Ness, we need some untouchables.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
Go. I'm sorry.
No, it's just, but leadership and followership both lack code of conduct, like Tariq was saying. So with the lacking of code of conduct, yes, any leader that is given to us, they have nothing to bind them, nothing to keep them on task, to keep them loyal, right? Because for one, they're given to us. But even if we have somebody come up from the grassroots, they can easily be plucked by the elite class and taken away from us because there's no code. And in my opinion, the leadership and the followership should spawn out of the code.
And that's the thing, though, because the culture has been so decimated in terms of what's respectable and responsible versus the unilateral independence that many of us seek. So we cool with the rules and regulations until the cramps our style.
Right.
Then all of a sudden you're controlling. Then all of a sudden you're oppressive in regards to those things. And if you don't have the cooperation of people, of the people who you're trying to put in better positions in life, because I'm not even going to say leaders, but if you're not trying to if you're not trying to follow or be a person, a good steward, then there's no use for a leader. And we've seen it. We've seen how we try to organize and strategize in the community and so forth. We've seen it where the people, our people, Black people, have totally rejected anything that's going to take them out of their comfort zone. Anything that's going to and we've seen the push. We've also seen the other part. We've seen the desire, because we talk about the savior complex, but the other half of the savior's complex is those who believe that they're the savior, and they need to be the savior, and they're the ones who wants to be. They put their face on the cover of movements, on the cover of organizations, and it's not supposed to be about them. It's supposed to be about the people. But you see their desire for the attention that comes with being the alleged and assumed leader. And I have not met one yet that actually fits the bill of wanting, because that person would do things, would see the movement as bigger than themselves. I have not met that person who puts their face on the cover of a leadership role or position in the Pan-African or Black nationalist community. I've not met that person who didn't want to be the outspoken person, who didn't want to be the next Khaled, who didn't want to be the next Malcolm, who didn't want to be the next Farrakhan, who didn't want to be the next Asada, who didn't want to be the. I have not met that person yet. So it speaks to something like maybe, just maybe, that these people are the problem with the followership, because they're not leading for the right purposes. They don't want that throne, that seat for the right purpose. Like, what was the movie when Vin Diesel was in and he was Furion and he was fighting on the ship and they said, you know, Riddick, yeah. And he ended up taking out the leader in a fight. Like at the end of the movie, you know, he ended up taking out the leader. It's not Crooked Joe. Taking out the leader and he ended up falling in the chair and becoming the leader. But he didn't go there to become the leader. He went there to avenge his friend. You know what I'm saying? He went there to avenge his friend. So that's the type of leader. So he did it for a cause that was greater than him, and he became the leader. You know, we don't have nobody out there doing that. And shout out, and listen, I applaud Tariq for saying I am not a leader, because people are very selfish and very maniacal when trying to put that mantle on you, because now they can hold you accountable for things that they no longer want to be accountable for themselves.
Yeah. Well, you told us to do this. Well, no.
Or more so, you failed us.
But I think that's where we go back to, like, because one, I think we got to remember that we're not a natural people. And so that means that the natural ebb and flow, like, we don't get the luxury of just existing. And, you know, and if that's tough for you to deal with, I don't know, go buy a helmet, in the words of Candy. go buy a helmet. But the fact of the matter is, codes of conduct, right? Codes of conduct are natural outgrowths of somebody developing a state of symbiosis with their environment, right? This is how we live to survive and thrive. In order for that to occur naturally, you have to be in a natural environment. Otherwise, you do get a code of conduct. It's just retarded. And I don't even mean that in a negative way. Like, I mean that in like a not developed properly type of way. Yeah, like the development of it is retarded. So that's what we're dealing with. And so the other challenge we have with that is, because of who we are as a people, in order for us to correct it, a group of people have to decide that they're all going to collectively be a leader and come up with a code of conduct. And then one of those people has to be charismatic enough to present it to the masses and for the masses to receive it and kind of inculcate it like that. And the whole process by its design is what we're now calling toxic or corrupt or incorrect. But it's like, that's kind of the only way that's going to happen for us as a people. And so we run into this argument here of, not really an argument, but like a discussion of, okay, well, we know what happens naturally and we know what we need to happen. So how do we come to a place where we accept that while what normally happens is not good, it needs to be good for us because we're not a normally occurring people. And so then that also begs the question, like, because you guys are right, like, especially on the followership argument. But I think the reason why, as you know, PC put it very well, like, it's selfish, it's maniacal. the way people utilize the mantle of leadership against somebody. Like, it's not even like, hey, here's the mantle of leadership, follow us. They're not on no Optimus Prime type stuff. Nah, they're like,
do this.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, here's the mantle of leadership. Yeah, take that, wear that, put that on. Go get the baby oil. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what they're on. And so it becomes one of those situations where it's like, oh yeah, I'm just waiting on you to slip up. I already got my pants by my ankles. Soon as you get loose, I'm on it. And so but when we're talking about followership, what we're talking about here is you're held responsible for following people with nefarious intentions. You are responsible for transmitting your portion of power to an individual that doesn't have your best interest or the best interests of the collective at heart. You are directly responsible for every scam artist, con artist, or other malcontent, or any other nefarious individual that came to power and caused damage to the Black community. Everybody that supported that individual is responsible for that. You don't get to buck that and say, well, I was just following them. No, that is proper leadership. Proper followership is holding your leader accountable and saying, hey, look, you move this way. And we don't like that. So we're going to take our power back, and you're going to become what all crazy people come when they're walking and talking with nobody following them. They just become a crazy person walking and talking with nobody following them.
So when you were talking about nefarious, the nefarious plans to put somebody in leadership, you made me think about Thomas Sankara and Blaise Compaoré, and you know, they overthrew the government together, but clearly Blaise Compaoré had a bigger plan to put Thomas in place. And you know, Thomas was doing what he needed to do to revitalize the land, to transform the land. Went from West Upper Volta to Burkina Faso. He was changing policies, things were getting better, and you know, he was taken out, and then Blaise put himself in place. So he kind of used Thomas Sankara to put himself as that next step. So that's the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about that nefarious leadership.
Yeah, and that triggered me into thinking about bang bang. PC used a great example of followership in action when a code of conduct is also in place, because he talked about the movie with Riddick joint. The beginning of the third movie, because that was the second movie you talked about. The beginning of the third movie, he had been stabbed in the back and dumped into a planet. The followerships of that culture that he became the leader of rejected him. They said, oh, you know what? You're not like us. You're not what we need, what we want, what we're used to. Yes, you're the leader for now, but we're going to get rid of you because you're not for us. You are for you. And they got rid of him. And that was a brilliant example you used, because that is an example of somebody that took the mantle of leadership accidentally. Wasn't even thinking about it. He was getting revenge for his friend. And he got the mantle of leadership, and the followers around him recognized, oh, you're not even thinking about us.
Code.
The code of action, the code of conduct kicked in. And they stabbed him in the back and left him on a planet to die.
Yeah.
Great example, PC.
Yeah.
Hey, man, whenever I can, you know.
Cooking with Carl. Hey, so I want to shift the conversation a bit. The gentleman that Tariq was talking to, he said that he believed W.E.B. Du Bois was pushing Pan-Africanism to destroy the Black community in America. Start with you, PCs. What are your thoughts on that, man?
I disagree with that totally. I mean, listen, I identify with the FBA movement and things of that nature. And like I said, I like Tariq. I like the things he does. I like all the things he do. But when sometimes people try to brown nose too much, so they try to create a narrative that doesn't exist. And to say that W.E.B. Du Bois didn't think what he thought was in the best interest of black people, I think is kind of foolish. He even left a letter on his way upon leaving America. He actually chastised the Boule for what they became. And so I think all of these brothers thought they were doing the right thing. Like Pat said, we're a new creation of people that we don't have roots that go like some of us can trace our roots to about 1850 if we're lucky. If we're lucky. The majority of us, due to the slave trade that was going inside the country, inside of the destabilization of families and the separation of children and the removal, we can't go back to the ancestral roots that we had in Africa. Many of us, we have to survive in a new place. America's not Africa. We have to survive and learn how to survive in a new place. So therefore, you have to create a new code of conduct. And I think, or you have to try to find a new way. And I think those brothers, W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, tried to figure out a way that they thought worked best to build stable black communities. And one thought that the agricultural economy was the best way to go. The other thought the emergence into the American society and learning the ways of the American society will work. Well, we learned now that, both of them had their pros and cons.
Right.
Now, 100 years later, so we get to look back at that. But to say that they had oppish behavior because they wanted to be Pan-African or black nationalists, I think is a bit absurd. When you look at that from that perspective, I think you're just trying to create a narrative that didn't exist. But they wouldn't have taken Booker T. Washington out if he was that, if he didn't have other intentions on building a stable economy for black people that we can control. I think that even with all the critique of W.E.B. Du Bois, and I have my critique of Du Bois, I think he also wanted better for black community just based on the fact that he bought into something that he thought would lift up the black community. To say they were oppish and working in league with white supremacy, I think I just don't think that's an argument you can really make. You can make arguments about whether they were wrong, right or wrong. The whole notion of the miseducation of the Negro that we just spoke of earlier was based in the critiques of the Boule. If you really break the book down, in the wrongful teachings, in the wrong ways to learn the lessons as leaders of a black community, and I'm talking about a leadership class that did not look to more so assimilate into a culture rather than create the things you need for your own culture. But it goes back to the fact that we are a new people here, and we have yet to develop a set of norms or a code of conduct that has been effective enough to get all the people, at least the majority of people, on code. We struggle with just getting a critical mass on code. So I'll land my plane there.
Yeah. Pat, bring you back in on this. Your idea, the gentleman said he believed Pan-Africanism was given to destroy the black community in America. You agree or disagree?
I disagree with him. And I think it's funny, PC and I was talking about this, I think it was Tuesday, about how we do have to walk a line between expressing disagreement with the people that came before us, our elders, and being disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a certain tonation to what he was saying that could be viewed as being disrespectful to the legacy of W.B. Du Bois. And while I, just like PC, do have disagreements with W.B. Du Bois and his approach. The same as I have disagreements with Martin Luther King and then several others. I have disagreements with just about all of them, for being honest. But I respect the fact that these people went out and they died on their shield. You know what I'm saying? Like, they lived. Not only did they die for it, because my thing is, dying for something is easy. You only do it once. You never have to do it again. But they lived for it. Like, all of the trauma, the turmoil, the pain, the suffering, the emotional damage, they lived every day going through that. And you don't do that unless you truly believe in something. And we can see that nowadays. You see how many of these modern people nowadays flip-flop beliefs the moment the pressure gets turned up, the moment another angle gets presented to be more lucrative, or something that'll expand their fan base even further. They full on turn into caricatures. They full on turn into like entertainment pieces. They transition their whole brand. So we see that. We didn't see that from W.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. We didn't see that from many of these people. So I think we have to toe that line. The second thing is, I'm not a Pan-Africanist, but I see the value in it.
Mm-hmm.
Pan-Africanism is a natural and direct outgrowth of the pushback against global white supremacy. It serves a purpose. Me personally, I am at the level of a black nationalist. I understand that level up there, but I'm not up there. That's not my space. There's other people's spaces. So then the view of W.B. Du Bois as being a father of Pan-Africanism, as I've heard some people say, and I can't remember if the gentleman said it in this piece.
I think it's in this piece.
But that view that we have of associating Pan-Africanism with W.B. Du Bois, and then essentially doing the exact same thing that Tariq Nasheed said people do. They're attacking Pan-Africanism by attacking W.B. Du Bois.
Right.
Right.
I think what we got to remember, like one of my favorites, Edward Wilmot Blyden. Right.
Yeah, he was noted as the father of Pan-Africanism.
Right. That man wrote Christianity, Islam, and the Negro Race. He also wrote a vindication of the African race. And in both pieces, he talked about the nature of the African collective. He popularized, he coined the term. He is one of those people that really put Pan-Africanism on the map as a movement and as a social and cultural identity, right? Why is that man not talked about? Why do we use W.B. Du Bois and other people that we can clearly identify holes in their presentation? To like, what's the focus there? Because they're go ahead.
I just say, if you ask me, I would think because he predated the Pan-African Congress and the conferences. If you ask me,
he did. But he wrote his works. His major works were written before W.B. Du Bois was even born.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the fact of the matter is, he wasn't chosen. He wasn't chosen to be out front. And, we like to give credit to the white man for building and making us. So,
yeah.
I mean, because you have him, you have later Martin Delaney, who was actually, putting together pushes and movements to get black folk back to Africa. And the funny thing is, if we walk along that line, now what are you saying? Malcolm was an op to the black community, because Malcolm believed in Pan-Africanism through black nationalism. Malcolm actually was meeting with leaders in African countries prior to his assassination in regards to building a Pan-African nation built based on black nationalism. And he legitimized it and justified it by identifying white nationalism and how it preserves itself and how it became a power base for the white community at large. So when you think about this particular line of thinking, it's very dangerous to go down that path, because now you're starting to take shots at people who were black first. They were B1 before B1 was a saying. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, because I've been thinking about this for a couple of days since I heard it, and I've never once thought of Pan-African as being something detrimental to us. I thought Pan-Africanism, like we've always talked about, would be the next step after we get our stuff together here. We become a power base here, therefore we can be better for the African diaspora. That's what I've always looked at it now. And thinking more on it, and after listening to it tonight, I guess my argument would be that not that Pan-Africanism was bad, but that Black America or even the diaspora wasn't ready for Pan-Africanism to really take it and carry it to the next level like it needed to be. I think that's more of a conversation and an argument rather than Pan-African being detrimental to us. Because I guess I would ask for examples, like real life examples of how Pan-Africanism was detrimental to us here in America.
I mean, I get the argument. I understand what the brother is saying, especially if he's coming at it from the perspective of the focus on Pan-Africanism causes us to lose sight of our own cultural identity here in America.
And I can take that. I ain't got no problem with that.
Right.
Because that makes sense.
And so I understand the argument, which is why, a natural outgrowth of what I was thinking was exactly what you said. The problem isn't necessarily with Pan-Africanism, it's with the way Black people relate to it.
Right.
The way Black people in America relate to it.
Well, globally and historically, like we've always said, I continue to say it, read Destruction of Black Civilization, it stamps it. That African collective mindset of Black people across the globe, even Black people continentally, as one that has never existed. And so Pan-Africanism, though it's a great ideal and a great thing for us to move toward, people who've never operated as one, to put that ideology for them, and then with us, we just trying to get our foothold here in America. We wasn't ready for it. We don't have the mindsets for it. We're not in the best positions to take it to the next level, to be a collective, because hell, we're not in positions to be a collective in our own spaces. So to be a global collective, we just wasn't ready to take that next step.
No, we're in the prison.
Yeah,
but we're operating like we're different gangs in the prison, but we're still treating it like we're out in the streets. So when we see the ops, the ops, we act like we do when we see the ops, not realizing that our goal should be to be free from this prison. In order to do that, we have to create a new norm that we're no longer ops. What you're speaking to is the fact that most of us don't recognize the gates and the bars and the walls. So we still think that, well, even in the prison, the best thing we can do is acquiesce with the current system, but also still look at each other from the position of ops. And I have dedicated my life over I'd say the last third of my life to being for the people exclusively, our people, Black people. And I tell you, the hardest part of dealing with that is the amount of enemies you run into that look like you in this particular area. And I even said it to Black people, that's like, they get offended when you critique something European, something white made, something. They get critiqued. Like, I've had this one sister, and she would invite me to her house, and the family, this, that, and the other, and her daughter would have a big problem with me calling out white supremacy. So every time I came there, she would try to corner me somewhere and talk about, why do you have such an issue with white people? And I'm like, little girl, go do something. Yeah, because, and that's that's the notion of it. So when you speak to us not being ready, I'm not sure if we're not ready or we just have this so much disdain for one another that we don't want to be ready. And
well, yeah,
we would just rather have proximity to whiteness. Like Dr. Jerome Fox wrote a book, Addicted to White, and he talks about this.
But but it's hard to have a paradigm shift when you are primed and when you're a group of people who are primed to be given leaders and be given ideologies and be given ways of life and be given your success and be given what you should attain by your oppressors. It's hard for you to have a paradigm shift, continuing to operate like that. You have to want to change.
Look at this last election cycle. After the election, the white folk, the rich white folk who poured money into this election are so mad right now that they said that the current vice president will not be allowed to run in 4 more years. Do you understand that? She will not be allowed to run because they said they are removing their resources from her, right? Because of poor campaign management, poor budget management, but also she sold them on something that she couldn't push through. Who is still the most loyal people to this person? Who are still the people still giving money to a campaign that's over with? Black people. Still giving, primarily black women, but also the boule blacks are the ones that are stubbornly still contributing to this losing leadership. So when you think about, like I said, it's the disdain for real, because I don't know how far you got to go to know this lady ain't really black, but it's the disdain for doing anything that's going to be self-serving to a community rather than things that people believe are going to be self-serving for them. And also the disdain, and also it's sort of like a stubbornness that you can't tell me to do things a certain way. You can't tell me what is the term? Who's going to check me, boo? Like, that's the mentality now that you face in the black community. If you are trying to do something productive for black folk, I no longer try to say, hey, black people, maybe we should do this. Maybe I just go out and do it myself.
Yeah.
My good brother Arnett Woodall from West Philly Produce. Y'all go check that brother out. He's on 62nd and Ludlow in West Philly. Shameless plug for my mans. After Thanksgiving, on Black Friday, this man prepared 100 dinners, gift bags of food, groceries, fresh produce, and things of that nature. I helped that man. We sat outside for several hours on that Black Friday while people trying to figure out what they were going to buy off of, these particular websites or going to stores and beating each other down to get the latest toys for their children, even though they shouldn't be able to. They can't really afford it right now, but we were out there just doing what we can for the community. That brother's been out there working in the community, and he received so much opposition just because he's trying to do things the right way. Now, I'm not saying he's perfect, but none of us are. But his heart is in the right place. You did what I'm saying? And that man is up with so much opposition. That's what I'm talking about. So we just got to get out there and do the work.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I went to the Million Man March. Went to both of them. My first trip to the Million Man March, people still don't know the purpose. People just talk the Million Man March. No, it's the Day of Atonement. Black men made a pledge to come back to their communities and do better. A lot of us did. I was in college back then. But a lot of us did. Came back to our communities and tried to make them a better place. This last Million Man March was about people just showing up and being a part of this, that, and the other. But I was talking to some brothers, and they were sitting there waiting for Farrakhan to give them the permission to be men in their communities. I came here to see what Farrakhan was going to say. I'm just waiting to see what Farrakhan was going to say. Well, bro, if you know what you're supposed to be doing, why do you need to wait for another man to tell you to do it? I don't wait for nobody. Y'all don't wait for nobody. Shoot, every time I talk to y'all working on something, doing something. You know what I'm saying? So,
but it's that I'm happy this conversation went the way it went, because you can't give a group of people a leader if they don't have the messed up mindsets to keep accepting leaders that are given to them by their oppressors. Like, these same people, we're looking for leaders, we're looking for saviors, we're looking for scapegoats, we're looking for all those categories, A through E, looking for all of that, all of the above we're looking for. And that's the problem, is as a collective, we're sitting around waiting on somebody to do it for us, and that's not how it happens.
One more thing, Joe, real quick, because I know you're about to wind down. Kamala was given to us in July. By November, you had people wishing death on Black men because she lost the election. That just tells you the sickness right there. And I'm never going to forget that part. That's something that's burnt in my soul. The fact that death was wished on men like me because she lost. And then she was given to us 4 months before an election. And it became a cult-like following.
Right.
That led to so much division that you had people who spent the holidays not speaking to their families.
Crazy for her.
And wishing death on Black men. Not going to let y'all forget that. There needs to be an atonement for that too.
I'm going to say it again. We've said 100 times. We have codes of conducts that we created that's available on thepax.org. All you got to do is go visit, check out the code of conduct that we created at thepax.org. Because, we're not saying that this is Black America's code of conduct, but why not create something that we can build off of? Like, shout out to Dr. Tia Son Johnson for his Black male political agenda. If you haven't checked that out, go check that out. These are things that we can use to build off of, because hell, everybody keeps saying we need this. Well, okay, we got something that we can build off of. So let's do it. So check out Dr. Tia Son Johnson, thepax.org. Make sure you check that out for the code of conduct, because without these codes, no matter what, even if the leader comes through grassroots, the leader will be plucked. The leaders will continue to be given to us. Whiteness will continue to be the mark without that true code of conduct, and we won't have paradigm shifts. Of course, we're going to need a paradigm shift to have a code of conduct, but that code of conduct will help to an even greater paradigm shift for us to move into a space where we are a collective of people who are not waiting on somebody to do something for us, but we have the fire lit up under our asses to make it happen for ourselves. And if a leader comes out of that leader will be bound to the code, or that leader will be ousted, like y'all gave the example in Riddick. But we have to put ourselves in that position. Stop waiting on a savior. Nobody's coming to save Black people. Nobody's coming to save us. That's why we're so vulnerable to any and everything. They chose Cardi B and all these other people to come talk to y'all during election time. Come on, man. Again. Remember, Joe Biden did it too. Joe Biden did it too 4 years ago. Again, they keep, and I'm not saying celebrities are our de facto leaders, but the celebrities operate as leaders in our community because of the followings that they have. And stop trying to make people leaders too. So
they were selected because it's 7 p.m. Friday.
Yeah, that too. That too. It is 7 p.m. Friday. No, actually,
Wow.
probably about 3 something, but yeah. So, FetLifeStation.com. Check it out. FetLifeStation.com. If you haven't checked it out, you're missing a whole lot. So make sure you go check it out. Of course, the link is in the description. On the shoulders1.com. Make sure you check it out. I know I gotta do a better job saying the stuff at the beginning. That's why I put the stuff in the description and like, comment, share, subscribe, all that. I gotta do a better job putting that at the beginning, but y'all get it. Support PC, support Pat, support On the Shoulders of Giants. We are doing our things in our community. We're doing the best we can with what we got. And if we want to do more, we need the support. So please continue to support us. We love you all. Make sure y'all we'll catch y'all on the other side. I don't know what I'm gonna say. We catch y'all next time. Bye.